time hold to the truth, which is Jesus Christ, but at the same time we can also share the various, intellectual opinions from like various diverse groups of people.
I guess please go back.
I think for diversity's sake, it would be important to express that there are Christian educators who say there is no Christian institution, but we are religiously affiliated institutions. Additionally, there's very wide diversity in the range of what Christian thoughts are. And so I think those are both some important elements to bring into the discussion. A quick question for the panelists. How do you feel about Bob Agee's writings about the umbrella model of Christian affiliated schools versus a systemic model?
I personally am unfamiliar with that.
Would you mind explaining them? Or?
The two prevailing models that Bob Agee presented were the systemic model where every element is based upon Christianity.
Okay.
The umbrella model says that the institution overarchingly is affiliated with a Christian denomination, and therefore the elements of the school are overall Christian, but not every single feature. And so, as Christian faculty, we are Christians, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we're evangelicals or we're Baptists per se or any other given denomination, because one thing that I have found with discussions of Christians is that some people define Christian as my denomination, and then further it that my denomination is my narrow view of this denomination. And in order to be a more broadly Christian affiliated school, we need diversity from Methodist, Presbyterian, Catholic, Baptist, etc. And these views are very wide-ranging in the world, in Christianity. And so sometimes I think we present a false dichotomy. You're either this view, which is mine, or you're against me, which is unchristian. And I think that can be very detrimental to the overall discussion of Christian higher education.
I'd like to speak to that. I actually did my undergraduate studies at a denominational school. So it was kind of in that, what you said of, this is the motivating policies are directly related to the denomination, to what a single denomination holds to. And so the majority of the students at that university, college, came out of that one denomination. And so what that did do naturally is in the classrooms, while it was openly Christian dialogue, every student there had to major in theology in addition to something else. What was discussed in the classrooms was very narrow to the theology of that particular denomination. I think that's okay in some senses, but having done my graduate work at a different style of Christian university where I interacted with professors and other students from a variety of denominational backgrounds, that certainly broadened perspective. I come from a Baptist background myself, but I had a theological foundations course taught by an Anglican, and that was a very unique situation because we were discussing foundational biblical truths and doctrines from slightly different perspectives. And maybe we didn't agree on everything, but it gave greater perspective. And I think that's one of the things that sets apart the Christian university from a secular university, is that there can be a truly open dialogue where we present what we believe to be true, the truth as we know it, as it's revealed in God's Word. But that doesn't mean we can't listen to what other people have to say. And I think that starts within our own home, within our own institution, listening to each other, not creating a polarized environment where, we're Baptists and you're Catholics, we're right and you're wrong. I think we do have to model that sense of dialogue to find common ground. And I think in most cases we're going to find that commonality in the person of Jesus Christ. And that's where it starts. That's where we as a Christian university have to start.
Yeah, let me add one more piece in this, in that I think our metaphysics is very key in this discussion. You know, what is our metaphysic, from which then we bring up epistemology in this discussion. And then at that point, then we are talking about our axioms and our ethics and our aesthetics and all that. So sometimes the lack of clear definition of our metaphysics sometimes creates all this divergent thinking. And if we have a solid system, then perhaps it could be, more unified somewhat. At least from my perspective, when I dialogue with the Hindus, we always go to that point, What is your metaphysics? Oh, this is my metaphysics, this is my starting point. And do you accept this premise or not? And when they say they do, then okay, let's go to the next discussion kind of thing. And so in my evangelism, while I understand the whole notion of conversive, Jonathan Edwardian type of theology, I think also I am aware of the Presbyterian notions of nurture and Christian nurture and things like that. And those are two very different approaches to Christian salvation journeys. So I think it matters, exactly like what you're saying. Is the university of this mold or of that mold? And if we can define that a little bit more clearly, then it helps to know that this is, Baptistic way of thinking. Let us follow this pathway. Or, if you become the academy and the university, then you're talking about intellectual diversity. Then this is where the denominational variety also comes in.
That's a good point.
I actually see that as a challenge for the Christian university and college, because this is completely anecdotal, but it seems like when we're talking about the systemic Christianity throughout a college, and echoing what you were saying, there's almost a sacrifice, right? You're sacrificing the intellectual rigor or the academic piece of it for the theological piece. On the other end, if you do the umbrella approach, as I've seen in other schools, that there's the sacrifice of the theology at the expense of the academic rigor, right, or the intellectual rigor. And so one thing that's been coming up in our book club is this idea of intentionality. And so that is a real challenge, I believe, for Christian colleges and universities, is to be very intentional about our identity as Christians, but also as an academic institution. And I think that's something that probably needs to be checked at every step along the way. But it starts, I also believe, going back to that right doctrine. There is bad theology out there. So we need to also, what is it, even if it's generally Christian, what is, going back to that essential? What is the essential?
Can I add a brief comment on what she shared? The definition of metaphysics, I think that we can easily find from I don't know the founders of this university, who they are. This university has a long history, but as a Christian university, I think we also need to think about the implementation, how we can apply those, what we hold to as a truth, to the students, from domestic students and international students, because this is not a seminary, but this is a Christian institution which teaches how we can use Christianity, how we can know the truth, and how we can apply this to our lives. And as she mentioned, there are a lot of bad Christianities, like open theism, like liberal Christianity. We believe one being, but three persons. We believe in Trinitarian, but there's people who believe one God with one person. Unitarian. So when we come with the umbrella approach, we can kind of fall into the fallacy of teaching students in the right direction, because this is it, this is that, you can choose between them, and that can be kind of not wholesome for the sake of the students who are from Korea, Japan, who have never heard of the simple gospel, Jesus died on the cross, resurrected in the 3 days, all those kind of things. So I think as as a student who has a lot of international students as my friends, kind of suggest that we need to really hold to this should be, like already in we kind of like agreed before we come to this university, because we chose this university because we agree with the foundational, truth, So yeah, but like at the same time, we can openly talk in this kind of like forum, or in the like theological department, or we can open some like dialogues at the same time. Yeah. But we need to think about like how we can implement our truth first to teaching. No, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point, just as well as, because this is sort of an issue that at some point you have to start dealing with, right? So you go, all right, we're going to bring in a variety of Christian opinions, right? And then, of course, but back to your point, how far wide? I mean, this is a Baptist school, right? And we go, okay, so like evangelicals, or maybe not so evangelicals, mainline, or like how far away do you start? Are we where we start, like you're talking about, we're starting thinking about different metaphysics or different assumptions, or how far do we start becoming back to we're postmodern again, right? Where it's like, oh yeah, we have a variety of truths that are Christian truths, and I'm not saying I don't know the answer to that. But there is a point where we go, okay, so these are sort of the limits of where we go. This is considered a Christian perspective, and this is not. And I'm not sure where the answer to those limits could be.
I think part of the answer is to say that I have a preference for which one I would like to work at. But it would be a bit ironic to say in a discussion where we all sort of embrace some notion of diversity that all Christian universities should function the same way. Mm-hmm. And so there should be, I think, in the world of Christian universities, schools that adopt both approaches, if only because they hold each other in check somehow. But I would add one other thing, that the secret to making a good movie is in great casting. And so if you want to make sure that Christianity becomes part of teaching, even in an umbrella model, you make sure that you hire Christians, because good Christians will live their life in everything they do, including how they teach. And then you kind of let the system work, which is why I kind of prefer an umbrella model, that we should make sure that the people who we hire at the school share at least the common denominator of Christian faith and are willing to honestly pursue the Christian lifestyle. But I don't know that all schools should do that. I think it would actually lead to an unhealthy Christian system of education if they all did.
Mm-hmm. And if iron sharpens iron, and that premise is acceptable within biblical teachings, then perhaps we're all, like was mentioned, through a dark glass are looking, and therefore we are being purified as we go. And if you would allow that, the ultimate goal here and the end game is to become more Christ-like. Whether you're coming in from a very chromatic pathway or a diverse pathway, if you're truly following, pathways, we ought to be able to become more Christ-like. And I think in that kind of a journey, then, alongside of truth, we are extending grace when we don't understand, and allow me to understand you, because your experiences have been clearly, let's say, earth-shattering. And if you're coming at this from that vantage point, I'd like to learn more. And if we took that humble position, perhaps we will learn a lot from one another.
I think that's really the key in whoever we're dealing with. Dr. May talked about, having these two positions where one's attacking the other as we're right, you're wrong. And I think throughout history, including Christian history, we've got numerous examples of that being played out. And so I think whether it be in our worldview as Americans, that we are willing to listen to each other. And I think it's especially important when interacting with internationals, that it's not just I'm telling you who I am, I'm telling you what I believe, but it's opening up, it's asking questions, it's creating dialogue to hear who they are and what they believe. And I think it's through that openness. Look at how Jesus modeled. Jesus was the ultimate teacher. Jesus is the truth. Jesus didn't compromise on that in any way, and yet Jesus, most importantly of all, showed compassion, even to those who were considered the outsiders of his own day. And I think that's where we start in our dialogue with people with differences of opinion. We don't attack, because when we attack, we close doors. But when we listen, we gain an audience, and I think that's where we can make a big difference.
So as going back to the original question, what is the role of Christian university in contemporary American society? And so, actually, we kind of have this dialogue in a way to open our education so that we can embrace different aspects. But actually, when we go to society, we are minors. We are not majority. In terms of academics, when we stick to creationism and go to the science field, they believe evolutionism, and we are minors. So I think it's important to open our academics so that we can know and we can interpret in our Christian viewpoint how we can persuade other people when we graduate from the university. So in that sense, it's important to teach different various aspects, so that we can prepare. So how to work with other people in society, and also it's important to learn how to shape in the right culture. As having an identity as Christian, we should not conform to the ways of the world, but rather change the world by showing exemplary of serving others, giving others, and praying, volunteering. So academically and also through our behaviors, we also can shape the culture and the society in a right way, in a Christian way.
Any responses to that comment?
Just kind of the general dialogue that's been going on. I think with regard to the dogmatic part, I think there's an element where we should be dogmatic on the basics of Christianity, where we don't bend, but on the questionable areas, we should be able to talk about that. But we need to talk with knowledge, and so I think one of the things, we live in basically a biblically illiterate culture now. One of the questions I ask my students I might say, are you a Christian? And just about everybody says yes. And then I'll say, what are the four Gospels? And I'll have maybe 3% of the people who know it. They don't even know the four Gospels. So we have a whole culture who thinks they're Christians because mom and dad were, whatever it was, whatever the reason. So I think we need to study the Scriptures. And that's where we're going to find our answers and be able to find truth, so to speak. If it's one of the questionable areas, let's say salvation, you have to speak in tongues or something like that. We can dialogue about that, but, and I'm not going to be dogmatic about it, but the basics, Jesus being God, that sort of thing, I'm not going to bend. Something we also need to consider, Jesus was very divisive. He wasn't here to have a big kumbaya party and everyone came to him. Look at the end of his life. Look what happened to him. Everyone ran away from him. And it's one of the problems we have in education. We've got to pay our electricity bill here and pay for these buildings. But Jesus, he scares people. It's a spiritual battle that we're facing. So we have to know what truth is, and we're only going to get that from the Scriptures. In dialoguing about social issues and everything, the only thing I would say, why get involved with politics? I would say Because if we vacate, secularism is going to fill. And then every part of politics, and that actually happened, went back in the 30s and 40s. So the Christians left and secularism came in. Same thing happened to education. So, I mean, so now if you're anywhere, if you're a Christian in higher education, you'd be lucky if you have a job if you're secular. So, so we need to know our scriptures, be able to talk intelligently about what happened. And as far as like Christian affiliation, I would really like to get away from the whole identity thing of I'm a Baptist, I'm a Lutheran, I'm this. Let's just go back to the scriptures. That's where the truth is. And so, if you want to argue that some minor issue, and because of that minor issue, you're a Presbyterian, not a charismatic. If you really want to argue about that, why can't Christians just love people more? Why be so judgmental? I mean, the Bible does say that judgment does start in the house of God, and we aren't supposed to judge outsiders. So if you're not a Christian, we're not even supposed to judge you. So we're supposed to judge our people who call themselves Christians. So people will ask me why are Christians so judgmental. I'll say we're not. We're where we shouldn't be, except against people who say they're Christians. But you got to know your scriptures for that. So I think we need to get back to a knowledge of the scriptures. And I'm preaching to myself right now. So, but I think that's important.
So unless there's any final comments or questions. So I think it's clear that there are more questions that have been posed than answers, which only proves the need for follow-up conversations and perhaps another panel devoted to the topic in the future. Can you all join me in thanking our panelists again for participating? The panelists and everyone join you in your attendance and your participation. So thank you all.